I opened my phone on Christmas morning to find a text that felt like a punch to the gut. "Thanks for existing. Don't come." The sender was my father. I stared at it in disbelief, especially after spending months supporting my sister Amanda financially while living in her spare room. I had covered rent, groceries, and utilities without complaint, despite working extra shifts. The betrayal cut deep on what should be a family celebration day. My hands shook as I confronted Amanda, who merely shrugged and said, "I just told them the truth about your situation." 6 months ago, my life took an unexpected turn. After 5 years at Madison Financial Partners, I found myself among the 30% of employees let go during corporate restructuring. At 32 years old, I had to completely rethink my path. My apartment lease was ending the following month, and without steady income, renewal wasn't an option. When Amanda offered her spare room, it seemed like the perfect, temporary solution. My younger sister had always been the family favorite, the one with the marketing degree from a prestigious university and the proper career path, as our father Frank would say. Despite being only 29, Amanda had already received multiple promotions at her advertising agency and seemed to be living the dream in her downtown apartment. "Stay as long as you need, Pete," she told me over coffee after hearing about my layoff. "The second bedroom is basically a storage room with a pull-out couch, but it's yours until you get back on your feet." I was grateful, of course. Growing up, Amanda and I had drifted apart. She had been the golden child, the straight-A student who never questioned our father's authority. I was the opposite, always challenging his rigid worldview, which only cemented my position as the family disappointment. Our mother Diane remained passive through it all. When Frank criticized my career choices or mocked my lack of ambition, she would stare at her plate and occasionally murmur, "Frank, please." But she never truly stood up for me. Over time, I had learned to limit my interactions with them, calling on holidays and birthdays but avoiding deeper connections. Within a week of moving in with Amanda, I found 2 jobs morning shifts at Westside Brews, starting at 5:30 and evening work as a delivery driver for local restaurants. The schedule was brutal, but I was determined not to become the leech my father had always accused me of being. What Amanda hadn't mentioned was her own financial situation. During my second week there, I noticed past due notices for utilities. When I asked about them, she brushed it off as just a busy month where she'd forgotten to pay. I offered to cover the bills that month, and she accepted with surprising eagerness. That became our unspoken arrangement. I paid 80% of the rent, all utilities, and most grocery expenses. Despite sleeping on a lumpy pull-out couch, surrounded by her unused exercise equipment and old college textbooks, I never complained. After all, family helps family, right? 3 weeks ago, Amanda mentioned Christmas at our parents' house. "Dad's actually been asking about you," she said while scrolling through her phone. "I think they want you to come this year." My heart lifted at those words. Despite everything, part of me still craved my father's approval. Maybe seeing how hard I was working would finally earn his respect. I immediately began shopping for thoughtful gifts. A leather-bound journal for my mother, who had once dreamed of being a writer. A rare first-edition book about architectural history for my father, who had built his construction business from nothing. And a vintage silk scarf for Amanda that I'd spotted at a boutique where I delivered food. Beyond the gifts, I was excited to share some good news. A customer at the coffee shop turned out to be the HR director at Taylor & Powell, a financial consulting firm. After several conversations about market trends, she had arranged an interview for me in January. It wasn't just any position, it was a senior consultant role that would put my career back on track. The night before Christmas, I overheard Amanda on the phone in her bedroom. Her voice was hushed, but I caught fragments. "No, Mom, just temporary. Really a mess. Trying to be nice." Embarrassing, actually. Something about her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. Amanda had given me shelter when I needed it most. She had suggested I join them for Christmas. Surely, she had my back. That night, I wrapped the last of the presents and placed them carefully in a gift bag. Tomorrow would be different, I told myself. Tomorrow, I would finally feel like part of the family again. Christmas morning arrived with a pale winter sun streaming through the blinds. I woke early, excited despite my nervousness about seeing my parents. Amanda usually slept until at least 10 on days off, so I decided to prepare a special breakfast as a thank you for everything. By 7, the apartment filled with the aroma of fresh coffee, bacon, and French toast, Amanda's favorite. I set the table with the festive placemats I'd bought and was adding the final touches when my phone buzzed on the counter. The message preview showed my father's name. My heart jumped. Perhaps he was sending Christmas wishes or confirming our arrival time. I opened it with a smile that quickly vanished. Thanks for existing. Don't come. 5 words that shattered my morning. I read them again, certain I'd misunderstood. Then, another message appeared beneath it. Amanda told us everything. We don't need your drama today. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. What had Amanda told them? What drama was he referring to? As if summoned by my thoughts, Amanda's bedroom door opened. She emerged fully dressed in a festive red sweater and dark jeans, car keys already in hand. Her expression flickered with something guilt, irritation, when she saw me standing there. "You're up early," she said, grabbing her purse from the counter and avoiding my eyes. I held up my phone. "Dad just texted me. He told me not to come." "What exactly did you tell them, Amanda?" She sighed as if I were being tiresome. "Look, Peter, I just told them the truth about your situation." "My situation? You mean how I've been paying your bills for 6 months?" Her face hardened. "I told them you've been squatting here, taking advantage while you figure your life out." Which is true, by the way. This was supposed to be temporary. The betrayal felt like ice water in my veins. Taking advantage? I pay 80% of your rent. I cover all the utilities. I buy most of the groceries. Amanda rolled her eyes. "And you think that entitles you to what? A medal? You're sleeping on a pull-out couch in my office because you couldn't keep your job. Meanwhile, I've had to explain to everyone why my 32-year-old brother is camping in my apartment." Her words stung, but something wasn't adding up. "Why would you tell them I'm taking advantage of you when it's the opposite? Why lie?" Amanda grabbed her coat, avoiding my gaze. "You don't get it, do you? For once in my life, I wanted to be the one they were proud of. I told them I was helping you out during your rough patch, that I was the successful sibling supporting the struggling one. The realization dawned on me. You've been taking credit for supporting me? While I've been covering your expenses? They've always expected so much from me," she snapped. "Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect life. Do you know what it's like living under that pressure? Meanwhile, they expect nothing from you. You fail, and it's just, poor Peter tried his best." I gestured to the breakfast I'd prepared. "I was making this to thank you. I thought we were in this together." Something like shame flickered across her face before hardening again. "Well, now you know. And honestly, your timing couldn't be worse. I heard you talking about that interview at Taylor and Powell. My confusion must have shown." "That's right," she continued. "I've been trying to get my foot in the door there for months. Then you swoop in and charm your way into an interview for a senior position. How do you think that makes me look?" The pieces were falling into place. "So you sabotaged me with Mom and Dad because you're jealous of a job I haven't even interviewed for yet." Amanda checked her watch. "I'm going to be late. Look, you should probably figure out your living situation. I told the landlord you'll be moving out after the holidays." "You what?" "It's my apartment, Peter. I've been nice letting you stay this long." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Don't call Mom and Dad today. They don't need the drama." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone in the apartment with a cooling breakfast and the family gifts I'd so carefully chosen. Through the window, I watched her get into her car and drive away without a backward glance. I sank into a chair, surrounded by the festive decorations that now seemed to mock me. The Christmas tree lights blinked steadily, illuminating the presents I would now never deliver. My phone remained silent. No calls from my mother asking where I was. No messages saying there had been a misunderstanding. They had written me off that easily, on Christmas morning, based on whatever story Amanda had concocted. For the first time since my layoff, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my situation. I was unwanted by my family, soon to be homeless, and completely alone on Christmas Day. The apartment felt eerily quiet after Amanda left. I sat motionless at the table for nearly an hour, trying to process what had just happened. Eventually, I cleared away the untouched breakfast and washed the dishes mechanically, my mind racing with questions. Why would Amanda lie so elaborately? What exactly had she told our parents? And more urgently, had she really spoken to the landlord about evicting me? I needed answers. Amanda's behavior seemed extreme even given our complicated family dynamics. There had to be more to the story. I went to her desk in the living room, where she kept important documents. I'd seen her retrieve bills from the top drawer numerous times when I offered to pay them. I wasn't proud of snooping, but I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The first folder I found contained bank statements. As I flipped through them, my confusion deepened. According to these records, Amanda had barely enough to cover half her rent, let alone other expenses. Her checking account showed a pattern of being nearly emptied each month, with frequent overdraft charges. Behind the bank statements, I found credit card bills, 5 different cards, all carrying balances close to their limits. The purchases weren't necessities but luxury items, designer clothes, expensive restaurants, weekend getaways to mountain resorts. All dated during the months I'd been covering our living expenses. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Amanda hadn't been letting me stay out of kindness. She'd needed my financial contribution to maintain her lifestyle while keeping up appearances. Digging deeper, I found a folder labeled budget that contained a handwritten ledger. On one side, she'd listed her actual expenses and income. On the other, a fictional version, where she earned much more and spent far less. Was this the reality she presented to our parents? As I replaced the financial documents, my eye caught a small leather journal partially hidden under some magazines. I hesitated, knowing this was crossing another line. But given what I'd already discovered, I needed to know how deep this deception went. The journal entries were sporadic but revealing. One from July, shortly after I moved in, read, "Peter's staying with me now." Mom and Dad were actually sympathetic when I told them. For once, they're seeing me as the successful child, instead of just expecting it. Dad actually said he was proud of me for helping Peter get back on his feet. If they knew the truth about my finances. Another entry from September was more troubling. Had to ask Peter to cover the electric bill again. He didn't even question it. Sometimes I feel bad about the arrangement, but then I remember how easily everything always came to him. He'll bounce back like he always does. Meanwhile, I'm drowning in debt while pretending everything's perfect. The most recent entry, dated just 3 days ago, sent a chill through me. Peter mentioned some big interview coming up. I looked at the company online. It's exactly where I've been trying to get hired. How does he always land on his feet? I can't let him succeed while I'm failing. Called Mom today and adjusted the narrative a bit. Told them Peter's become a problem, refusing to contribute and treating my place like a hotel. Dad was furious, exactly as I expected. Christmas might be the perfect time to settle this once and for all. My hands shook as I carefully returned the journal to its hiding place. Amanda hadn't just lied on impulse, she'd been strategically turning our parents against me for months, while simultaneously depending on my financial support. Next to her desk sat her laptop, still open from the morning. I hesitated, but decided to check if there was more to the story. The screen showed her email account, and at the top of her inbox was a message to our landlord sent yesterday. Mr. Davis, as discussed on the phone, I need to confirm that my brother will be vacating the apartment by January 1st. He was only supposed to stay temporarily, and the arrangement isn't working out. Please let me know what documentation you need from me, as the leaseholder. The landlord's response was directly below. Amanda. As I mentioned, you're currently 3 months behind on rent despite our payment plan agreement. I can't address guest policies until your account is current. Please bring payment to the office before December 30th to avoid eviction proceedings. 3 months behind? I had given Amanda money for rent each month, always in cash at her request. Where had that money gone? A sick feeling grew in my stomach as I checked her browser history. There I found more shocking revelations. She had been recording our conversations using her phone, then uploading selected clips to a private cloud storage, clicking one file labeled Peter. Ungrateful. MP3. I heard my own voice saying, I can't keep working these hours forever. The clip cut off there, removing the context where I'd been talking about eventually wanting to find a single full-time position instead of 2 part-time jobs. Another discovery made my blood run cold. In her documents folder, I found a copy of my professional portfolio, the same one I'd been updating for my upcoming interview. Next to it was a modified version, with my name removed and hers inserted. She had stolen my work samples and was passing them off as her own. The most disturbing find came when I searched for Taylor and Powell in her email. There I found a draft message, addressed to their HR department, to whom it may concern. I feel professionally obligated to inform you about Peter Jackson, who I understand is interviewing for a position with your firm. As his current roommate and sister, I've witnessed concerning behavior including financial irresponsibility and professional misrepresentation. The message continued with a list of fabricated concerns, each designed to sabotage my opportunity. She hadn't sent it yet, but the draft was complete and ready to go. Each discovery felt worse than the last. The sister I thought had offered me shelter during a difficult time had been systematically undermining me while exploiting my financial support. She'd manipulated our parents, stolen my work, and was actively working to destroy my future prospects. As the winter afternoon darkened outside the window, I sat surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, trying to make sense of it all. The Christmas gifts I'd bought sat untouched under the small tree. The family I thought I was reconnecting with had discarded me based on lies. And according to the landlord's email, I might soon have nowhere to live. For the first time since my layoff, I felt truly defeated. 6 months of working 2 jobs, supporting Amanda, and maintaining hope had led to this moment of complete betrayal. I was alone on Christmas Day, facing the ruins of both my family relationships and my living situation. As I carefully returned everything to its original place, my phone remained silent. No concerned call from my mother, no clarification from my father, no apology from Amanda. The apartment that had never quite felt like home now felt like enemy territory. Every corner held some evidence of deception. Every memento of our shared childhood seemed tainted by the revelation of who Amanda truly was. I sat in growing darkness as Christmas Day, the day I had hoped would mark a new beginning with my family, instead became the day I realized the painful truth about them. By 6 o'clock, the apartment had grown dark, except for the blinking lights of the small Christmas tree. I hadn't bothered to turn on any lamps. The darkness matched my mood as I sat on the pull-out couch, the bed that wasn't really mine in the room that had never welcomed me. Outside, lights glowed in neighboring windows. Families were gathering, celebrating, sharing meals. The occasional sound of laughter drifted up from the street, each burst like a personal accusation of my failure to create those same connections. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my sparse list of contacts. After years of focusing on work, my social circle had dwindled to colleagues who were now former colleagues. The only person I still spoke to regularly besides Amanda was Jake, my college roommate who had moved to Seattle 3 years ago. After a moment's hesitation, I called him. "Peter." "Merry Christmas, man." His voice was warm, the background noisy, with what sounded like a large family gathering. "Hey, Jake. Sorry to bother you on Christmas." Something in my tone must have alerted him because the background noise diminished as he presumably moved to a quieter location. "What's wrong? You sound terrible." The simple question broke something in me. The story poured out the months of supporting Amanda, the betrayal, the discoveries of the day. Jake listened without interrupting, only occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Jesus, Pete," he said when I finished. I don't even have words." "Your own sister did this?" "I keep trying to understand why," I said. "We weren't always close, but this level of sabotage seems extreme. Some people can't stand to see others succeed, especially if they're struggling." Jake replied, "Look, I wish I could be there. If you need money or a place to stay, I can help." The offer touched me, but Seattle was across the country. "Thanks, but I'll figure something out here." After promising to keep Jake updated, I ended the call and stared at the phone. Before I could reconsider, I dialed my mother's number. To my surprise, she answered on the third ring. "Peter." Her voice was cold, formal. In the background, I could hear the murmur of conversation and the clink of silverware. The family dinner I was supposed to attend. "Mom, I don't know what Amanda told you, but this isn't the time, Peter," she interrupted. "We're having dinner. It's Christmas. And I just got a text telling me not to come." "Don't you think that deserves some explanation?" She sighed, the sound achingly familiar from my childhood. The sigh that meant I was being difficult again, causing problems. "Your sister has been very generous, letting you stay with her. And this is how you repay her? By refusing to contribute? By making her uncomfortable in her own home?" "That's not true," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I've been paying most of her bills for months. I work 2 jobs. Amanda said you'd say that. She also said you've been taking credit for her financial help." The irony was so bitter I almost laughed. "Did she show you receipts? Bank statements? Anything to prove her story?" "I don't need proof, Peter. This pattern has been your whole life. Always the victim, never accepting responsibility." In the background, I heard my father's voice. "Is that him? Tell him to stop causing drama and grow up." The familiar phrase, "stop causing drama," had been the family response to any attempt I'd made to address conflicts or express hurt feelings. Looking back, I could see how it had trained me to accept mistreatment rather than make waves. "Mom, please just listen." "Enough, Peter." Her voice hardened. "We're having Christmas dinner. If you want to apologize to your sister and make amends, we can talk after the holidays. Otherwise, I think we all need some space." The call ended before I could respond. I stared at the phone, stunned by the finality of the disconnection. They had made their choice so easily. No benefit of the doubt. No questions asked. Amanda's version of reality had been accepted without hesitation. My phone buzzed with a notification. A social media update from a former colleague showed several of our mutual acquaintances at a holiday gathering. The caption mentioned missing those who couldn't make it, with a specific comment about hoping I was getting the help I needed. Confused, I scrolled through recent posts and messages, finding several references to concerns about my situation and stability. The pattern became clear. Amanda had been telling our mutual friends I'd become unstable and financially parasitic. She'd been systematically isolating me without my knowledge. The weight of these revelations crushed down on me as night settled fully over the city. I had lost not just my family, but potentially my reputation and professional network. I moved to the window, watching as snowflakes began to drift past the streetlights. Across the street, the apartment directly opposite showed a family gathered around a table, heads bowed in what appeared to be prayer or gratitude. The contrast between their togetherness and my isolation broke something in me. For the first time since my layoff, I allowed myself to cry not just for this Christmas, but for the pattern of conditional love and gaslighting that had shaped my entire life. I had always believed that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, proved myself enough, my family would finally accept me. Now I realized that nothing I did would ever be sufficient. The goalposts would always move because the game itself was rigged. Just as the darkness seemed most complete, my phone rang with an unknown local number. I answered without much hope. "Peter? This is Eleanor Thompson from 4B, came an elderly voice. Mrs. Thompson was my upstairs neighbor, a widow in her 70s, who sometimes accepted package deliveries for us. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson," I managed, quickly wiping my face though she couldn't see me. "Merry Christmas. I hope I'm not interrupting, dear. I noticed your sister leave early this morning, but I never saw you go. I was wondering if perhaps you were alone today." The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, nearly undid me again. "I am, actually." "Well, that won't do at all. I've made far too much food for one person. Would you consider joining me for dinner? Nothing fancy. Just an old woman's cooking." The unexpected kindness caught me off guard. "That's very thoughtful, but I wouldn't want to impose." "Nonsense," she said firmly. "Christmas isn't meant to be spent alone. And truthfully, you'd be doing me a favor. The apartment gets awfully quiet these days." Something in her tone suggested she understood loneliness far better than she let on. Thank you. I'd be honored." "Wonderful. Dinner in 30 minutes? Apartment 4B. Just bring yourself." An hour later, I found myself seated at Mrs. Thompson's small dining table, surrounded by decades-old holiday decorations and the aroma of home cooking. She had prepared a traditional meal: turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and various sides, all in portions that suggested she had indeed been hoping for company. "My herald always said I cooked for an army," she explained, passing me a bowl of mashed potatoes. Old habits die hard, I suppose. As we ate, she shared stories of her 60-year marriage, her career as a school librarian, and holidays past. She didn't pry into my situation, but created a space where conversation could flow naturally. Eventually, I found myself telling her about the day's events. Unlike Jake, who had responded with shock and anger on my behalf, Mrs. Thompson listened with a knowing expression that suggested nothing about human behavior surprised her anymore. "I've been where you are," she said finally, pouring us each a small glass of sherry. Not the exact circumstances, of course, but the feeling of betrayal by those who should love you most. She told me about her estrangement from her only son, who had cut contact after marrying a woman who disliked his parents. 15 years without a word, she said. Harold died still waiting for a phone call that never came. "How did you cope?" I asked. "Poorly. At first," she admitted. "I believed if I just tried harder, loved more perfectly, he would return to us. I nearly destroyed myself trying to win back someone who had already decided I wasn't worth keeping." Her words struck a chord. Hadn't I been doing the same with my parents for years? What changed? I realized that family isn't just blood, Peter. It's behavior. It's who shows up when you're in need. Who tells you the truth, even when it's difficult. Who makes space for you to be authentically yourself. She reached across the table and patted my hand. "From what little I've observed of your situation, you've been giving family loyalty to people who haven't earned it." "But they're my family," I said, voicing the argument I'd been having with myself for years. "Biology isn't a blank check for mistreatment," she replied gently. "You deserve better than what I've witnessed. That sister of yours has had you working yourself to exhaustion, while she takes the credit and the cash." I blinked in surprise. "You knew?" These old eyes still see plenty. "I've noticed you're coming and going at all hours for work. I've heard her telling people on the phone how she's helping her poor brother. Walls are thin in this building. Her straightforward assessment of the situation, free from the emotional complications of my personal involvement, helped clarify my thoughts. For the first time, I saw my family's treatment of me as an objective reality rather than a personal failing on my part. What should I do now? I asked, more thinking aloud than expecting an answer. Mrs. Thompson considered this as she gathered our dessert plates. That depends on what you want. Reconciliation requires all parties to acknowledge the truth and desire change. But protecting yourself doesn't require their participation at all. As our evening concluded, and I thanked her for both the meal and perspective, Mrs. Thompson held my gaze with surprising intensity. Remember, Peter, you're not responsible for fixing people who won't acknowledge they're broken. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and them is to stop enabling destructive patterns. I returned to Amanda's apartment with Mrs. Thompson's words echoing in my mind. The space no longer felt quite so hostile now. It was simply a place, not the arena of my worth. As midnight approached on Christmas Day, I sat at Amanda's desk, no longer crushed by betrayal, but energized by a new determination. The darkest night of my soul had passed, illuminated by unexpected kindness and hard-won clarity. I would no longer be the family scapegoat or my sister's financial support system. Whatever came next would be on my terms. With this resolution, I began to form a plan. The apartment was silent, except for the tick of the wall clock, as I spread documents across Amanda's desk. It was nearly 1 a.m. on December 26th, technically no longer Christmas, though the small tree still blinked in the corner. Mrs. Thompson's words had triggered something in me, a determination to break the cycle of manipulation and take control of my situation. My entire adult life had been spent trying to earn approval from people who seemed invested in withholding it. No more. First, I needed to document everything. Using my phone, I photographed all the financial records I'd discovered: Amanda's bank statements, showing minimal balances, credit card bills revealing luxury purchases, and the ledger where she tracked her actual finances versus the fiction she presented to others. I took pictures of the rent receipts I'd kept each month, showing the cash payments I'd given Amanda. I documented the utility bills I'd paid directly, the grocery receipts, and the record of my work schedules proving I'd been employed continuously since moving in. Next, I went through Amanda's laptop again, this time forwarding myself evidence of her deception: the draft email to my potential employer, the manipulated recordings, and most importantly, the correspondence with our landlord revealing she was 3 months behind on rent, despite my contributions. The landlord's email contained a crucial piece of information I'd overlooked earlier. The lease was month to month. This wasn't the long-term lease I'd assumed, but a flexible arrangement that could be transferred with the proper paperwork. An idea began to form, risky but potentially perfect. I checked the time. Too late to call the landlord directly, but his email had included a 24-hour emergency number for the property management company. After a moment's hesitation, I dialed. "Westside Properties emergency line," answered a tired-sounding man. "I'm sorry to call so late," I began, "but I have an urgent situation regarding Unit 312 at the Parkview Apartments." "What's the nature of the emergency?" he asked. "It's not a maintenance emergency," I clarified. "It's regarding the tenant situation. I understand you normally wouldn't handle this, but given the circumstances, I was hoping you could help or direct me to someone who can." After explaining that I was the person actually paying rent for an apartment where I wasn't on the lease, and that the leaseholder was significantly behind on payments despite receiving my money, the man seemed to wake up. "That's actually something we deal with more often than you'd think," he said. "The property manager, Mr. Davis, has been trying to resolve the payment issues with Miss Jackson for months. If you're interested in taking over the lease, that might actually solve several problems." Hope flickered. "Is that possible? Even tonight? We have electronic processing for emergency lease transfers. Given the rent delinquency situation, this would qualify. If you have proof of income and can cover the back rent, we could process this immediately to prevent potential eviction proceedings." My savings had been growing slowly despite supporting Amanda, thanks to tips from both jobs. I had enough to cover the back rent if it meant securing housing for myself. "I can do that," I said. "What do you need from me?" For the next hour, I completed electronic forms, submitted proof of employment, and arranged for a payment to cover the 3 months of back rent, plus the security deposit. The property manager promised to send final confirmation documents by email before morning, with an appointment for signing physical paperwork on the 26th. Next, I called a 24-hour locksmith service and explained my situation. After confirming I would have legal documentation of my tenancy by morning, they agreed to come at 7 a.m. to change the locks. With the apartment secured, I turned to the next phase of my plan. Amanda would return eventually, likely tomorrow, expecting to find me either gone or demoralized. Instead, she would face consequences. I gathered all the evidence I had collected and organized it into clear categories: financial fraud, professional sabotage, and family manipulation. Each category told part of the story of Amanda's betrayal. Together, they created an irrefutable case. But what was my goal? Revenge would be hollow and ultimately self-destructive. Pure escape didn't address the damage she'd done to my reputation and relationships. What I wanted was acknowledgement, restitution, and protection against future manipulation. I wanted my family to see the truth, even if they chose not to accept it. I wanted Amanda to understand that actions have consequences. I prepared 2 boxes from the holiday gift wrap supplies. In the first box, I placed a formal document I drafted, outlining Amanda's financial debt to me, every dollar I'd contributed that had disappeared, the back rent I'd just paid, and a reasonable timeline for repayment. I included copies of all supporting evidence and space for signatures. For the second box, I prepared something entirely different. 3 days earlier, while making a food delivery to an apartment complex across town, I'd heard faint mewing from a dumpster in the alley. Investigation revealed a tiny gray kitten, barely 6 weeks old, abandoned in the freezing temperatures. With no one around to claim it and the animal shelter closed for the holidays, I had brought it back to the apartment and created a temporary home in a storage bin, complete with makeshift litter box and blankets. I had planned to find it a permanent home after Christmas. Amanda hadn't even noticed its presence in my room, so rarely did she venture into my space. Now, this tiny survivor would become part of my new beginning, a reminder that abandoned things could thrive with proper care. I prepared proper supplies for the kitten, whom I'd been calling Scout Food, a proper bed, toys, and a small collar I'd purchased at a convenience store that, surprisingly, carried pet supplies. The second gift box became large enough to hold Scout temporarily for dramatic effect, with air holes discreetly punched in the sides. The final step was the hardest. I composed careful messages to my parents, not pleading or defensive, but clear and factual. I didn't send them immediately. They wouldn't be receptive yet, but saved them for the right moment. By 5 in the morning, exhaustion finally overtook me. I checked on Scout, sleeping contentedly in his makeshift bed, and allowed myself a few hours of rest. For the first time in months, I slept on the actual couch rather than the pull-out bed, fully dressed and ready for what would come next. The locksmith arrived promptly at 7, documentation in hand from the property management company, confirming my new status as legal tenant. Within 30 minutes, new keys were in my hand, and the old ones would no longer work. At 7:45, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda, coming back to get some things. Don't make it weird. I didn't respond. Instead, I finished arranging the living room. On the coffee table sat neatly organized folders containing all the evidence. Next to them, the 2 wrapped gift boxes, one containing the repayment agreement, the other holding Scout, who was thankfully napping after an early breakfast. I made coffee, sat on the couch, and waited. At 8:20, I heard a key in the lock, followed by frustrated jiggling when it didn't work. Then came the pounding, Peter, open the door. My key isn't working. I walked calmly to the door but didn't open it yet. The locks have been changed, Amanda. The landlord authorized it early this morning. What? That's illegal. Open the door right now or I'm calling the police. Actually, it's completely legal. I've taken over the lease since you were 3 months behind on rent payments. I have all the documentation. I'll let you in, but we need to talk first. Silence then. This is ridiculous. Let me in. It's my apartment. Not anymore. I opened the door, stepping aside as Amanda stormed in, her face flushed with anger. She froze when she saw the organized evidence on the table. What is all this? Proof, I said simply, of everything. Your financial fraud. The money I gave you for rent that never made it to the landlord. Your theft of my professional portfolio. Your systematic lies to our parents. The damage you've done to my reputation. Her expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and calculation. I recognized the look she was formulating a way to manipulate the situation. Peter, you're clearly upset. I understand Christmas was difficult. But this, stop. My voice was calm but firm. The gaslighting won't work anymore. I have evidence of everything, including recordings where you admit to lying about me to our parents and friends. Her face hardened. So what? You think anyone will take your side against mine? You're the family failure, remember? That narrative only works when I accept it, I replied. I've sent documentation to the landlord, my lawyer friend, and stored copies in secure cloud locations. If anything happens to me, or my reputation suffers further damage, everything gets released. This wasn't entirely true. I had secured the evidence, but hadn't involved others yet. But Amanda didn't need to know that. What do you want? She demanded, her voice tight. I gestured to the couch. Sit down. We're going to have a conversation about accountability and consequences. Amanda stood frozen in the entryway, her coat still on, key uselessly clutched in her hand. Her eyes darted between my face and the organized evidence on the coffee table. This is insane, she finally said. You broke into my personal files and accounts? That's illegal. I didn't break into anything, I replied calmly. Your laptop was open. Your financial documents were in the desk you told me to use for bill payments. Everything was in plain sight. You had no right. I had every right to understand why my sister, who I've supported financially for 6 months, told our parents I was a squatter taking advantage of her. I had every right to learn why the rent money I gave you never reached the landlord. I had every right to discover you stole my professional work and planned to sabotage my job interview. My calm recitation of facts seemed to unnerve her more than anger would have. She had expected defensiveness, emotional outbursts, the patterns she knew how to manipulate. Instead, she faced composed determination. You're twisting everything, she tried, removing her coat and advancing into the room. I've been helping you. Sit down, Amanda, I said, my voice still measured. Everything I'm about to discuss is documented right here. Reluctantly, she perched on the edge of the armchair farthest from me. I remained standing, a deliberate reversal of our usual power dynamic. Let's start with the financials, I began, opening the first folder. Here are copies of receipts showing I gave you $4,800 in cash for rent over 6 months. Here are bank records showing only $2,000 actually reached the landlord, leaving you 3 months behind. The money went to other expenses, she said quickly. Bills, groceries. I paid all utilities directly, I countered, opening the next folder. Here are those receipts. And here are grocery receipts showing I purchased approximately 80% of our food. So where did the missing $2,800 go? I slid her credit card statements across the table. Perhaps to Nordstrom? Weekend trips to Aspen? Dinner at Le Bernardin? Her face flushed. You're making me sound like a criminal. I was going to pay it back. When? With what money? According to your own budget records, you've been operating at a deficit for at least a year. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it, then back at Amanda. Interesting timing. Our parents just texted that they're on their way over. You called them, I assume. She didn't deny it. They should be part of this conversation since you're clearly having some sort of breakdown. I nodded, unsurprised. Good. I want them to hear this too. It saves me the trouble of meeting with them separately. This wasn't the reaction she expected. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. While we wait, I continued. Let's discuss how you manipulated recordings of our conversations to make me sound ungrateful and unstable. Or perhaps your draft email to Taylor and Powell designed to sabotage my interview. Or the text messages to our mutual friends painting me as parasitic. With each example, I presented the corresponding evidence. Amanda's confident facade began to crack. You don't understand, she said, her voice smaller now. Everything has always come so easily to you. I stared at her in genuine confusion. Easily? I lost my job through no fault of my own. I've been working 2 jobs with brutal hours for 6 months. I sleep on a pull-out couch and can barely afford to save anything because I've been supporting you. What exactly has been easy about my life? People like you, she said, a bitter edge to her voice. They always have. Dad always thought you were so smart, even when you disappointed him. Peter has potential, he always said. Do you know what he said about me? Amanda works hard. Like that was all I had going for me. So this was about jealousy? You sabotaged me because you thought our father secretly favored me? She laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Favored you? No. He expected nothing from you, which meant anything you achieved was a pleasant surprise. He expected everything from me, which meant my accomplishments were simply meeting the baseline. Before I could respond, a sharp knock came at the door. Amanda straightened, a flash of triumph crossing her face. She clearly expected our parents to take her side automatically, as they always had. I opened the door to find both of them standing there, my father's face set in familiar lines of disappointment, my mother's expression anxious. What's this about, Peter? My father demanded without greeting. Amanda says you've lost your mind, changed the locks on her apartment, and are making wild accusations. Hello to you too, Dad, I replied calmly. Please come in. I've been looking forward to showing you something. My mother looked between us nervously. Peter, we just want to resolve this peacefully. If you need help, we can find someone for you to talk to. The familiar assumption that I was the problem, the one who needed fixing, might have hurt before. Now it simply confirmed what I already knew. Actually, Mom, I've never been thinking more clearly. Please, both of you, have a seat. This concerns all of us. They entered warily. My father immediately moving to stand beside Amanda's chair in a clear statement of allegiance. My mother sat on the couch, leaving space that suggested she didn't want to sit too close to me. Peter changed the locks. Amanda began immediately. He broke into my personal files and I took over the lease legally this morning, I interrupted, handing my father the documentation. Amanda was 3 months behind on rent, despite receiving my payments. The landlord was preparing eviction proceedings. My father scanned the papers with a frown. What payments? Amanda told us you've been staying here rent-free. That's what I want to discuss. I gestured to the evidence spread across the table. For 6 months, I've paid 80% of expenses in this apartment. I have receipts for everything. Amanda has been taking my money, using it for luxury purchases, and telling you I'm taking advantage of her. That's absurd, my father scoffed, not even glancing at the documents. Amanda has a good job. She doesn't need your money. Actually, Frank, my mother said quietly, surprising us all. Remember those calls from debt collectors we received for her a few months ago? Amanda paled. Mom, that was a misunderstanding. I explained that. Look at the evidence, I urged, pushing forward bank statements and credit card bills. Everything is documented here. Amanda has been living beyond her means for at least a year. My father reluctantly examined the financial records, his frown deepening. My mother leaned forward to look as well, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern. There must be some explanation, my father said, but his voice held less conviction. There is, I replied. Amanda needed my financial support, but didn't want to admit her difficulties to you. Instead, she created a narrative where she was helping me. Is this true? My mother asked Amanda directly. Amanda's composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Always having to be perfect. Always having to succeed. Meanwhile, Peter gets to fail, and everyone just feels sorry for him. No one feels sorry for me, I said quietly. No one has even asked how I'm doing. I lost my job, worked 2 minimum wage positions, paid someone else's bills, and got a text on Christmas morning telling me not to come to family dinner. All based on lies. My father looked uncomfortable for the first time. Amanda said you were becoming unstable, refusing to contribute. The only unstable person here is the one who stole my professional portfolio to pass off as her own work, I replied, opening another folder. Or the one who recorded our conversations, edited them misleadingly, and sent them to people to damage my reputation. I placed my phone on the table and played one of the recordings I'd found on Amanda's cloud storage. My voice saying, I can't keep working these hours forever, followed immediately by what sounded like, I don't want to pay for everything anymore. Then I played the original conversation from my own phone's backup, where the full exchange was clear. I can't keep working these hours forever. I need to find 1 full-time position with benefits instead of 2 part-time jobs. I don't want to pay for everything anymore. I'd like to start saving for my own place eventually. The contrast was stark. My father's expression darkened, but not at me this time. Amanda, he said slowly. What is this? You never listen to me, she burst out. You only hear what you want to hear. I've been drowning trying to live up to your expectations. And Peter just walks in and takes over. Takes over what? I asked. A pull-out couch and a spare room. The privilege of working 60 hours a week to pay your bills. The joy of being excluded from Christmas with my family. My mother was now examining the financial evidence more carefully. Amanda, these credit card charges. $3,000 at Nordstrom? Last month? Weekend trips? Restaurant bills for hundreds of dollars? Where did this money come from if you were struggling? Amanda's face crumpled. I made some mistakes, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I screwed up. But he didn't have to do. This. She gestured wildly at the organized evidence. What exactly did you expect me to do? I asked. Continue paying your bills while you turned my family against me? Keep quiet while you sabotaged my job prospects? Accept being homeless when you told the landlord to evict me? I wouldn't have let you be homeless, she muttered. The evidence suggests otherwise, I replied. You told the landlord I would be gone by January 1st. You told our parents I was taking advantage of you. You were systematically cutting off every support system I had. My father stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to us. When he turned, his expression was uncharacteristically troubled. That narrative only works when I accept it, I replied. I've sent documentation to the landlord, my lawyer friend, and stored copies in secure cloud locations. If anything happens to me, or my reputation suffers further damage, everything gets released. The shift in his focus from automatic blame of me to questioning Amanda seemed to shock everyone in the room. Amanda, most of all. You raised me. To succeed, she said bitterly. To be perfect. To never show weakness. What was I supposed to do when everything started falling apart? Ask for help, my mother suggested gently. Tell the truth? Not steal from your brother and sabotage his life? Amanda looked at her in disbelief. You're taking his side? After everything I've accomplished? After all the times you've told me how proud you are of me? This isn't about sides, I interjected. This is about truth and consequences. Which brings me to these. I gestured to the 2 wrapped gift boxes on the table. I prepared these for today. Christmas gifts, if you will. More evidence of how I've failed? Amanda asked sarcastically. No, I said. Something much more important. A path forward. The living room fell silent as I reached for the first gift-wrapped box. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, coating the world in clean white. Inside, the tension was thick enough to touch. Before I open these, I said, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and truth. My father shifted uncomfortably. He was used to being the authority figure, the one who pronounced judgments rather than stood accused. My mother wrung her hands in her lap, her eyes moving nervously between family members. The first gift, I continued, lifting the larger of the 2 boxes, is an opportunity for honesty. I removed the wrapping to reveal a document folder tied with ribbon. Opening it, I extracted several papers and laid them on the coffee table. This is a formal acknowledgement of financial debt, I explained. It details the exact amount Amanda owes me: $4,800 in rent payments, plus $1,700 in utilities, and approximately $2,000 in groceries and household expenses. It also includes the 3 months of back rent I paid this morning to prevent eviction proceedings, $3,600. Amanda started to protest, but I held up a hand. The total comes to $12,100. I've drawn up a reasonable payment plan that wouldn't strain your finances if you make appropriate lifestyle adjustments. $200 monthly would satisfy the debt in approximately 5 years. You expect me to sign this? Amanda asked incredulously. I expect you to take responsibility for your actions, I replied. This document also includes acknowledgement of the professional misconduct, the theft of my portfolio, the planned sabotage of my interview, and the manipulation of our parents and friends. My father picked up the document, scanning it with his reading glasses. As a businessman, he understood contracts and financial obligations. This is quite detailed, he said finally. And fair, actually. The payment terms are more generous than any bank would offer. He turned to Amanda, his expression grave. You should sign this. Dad, she protested. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious, he replied. I've looked at the evidence, Amanda. What you've done goes beyond sibling rivalry or financial mismanagement. You deliberately deceived everyone, stole from your brother, and tried to destroy his reputation and prospects. If this went to small claims court, you'd lose spectacularly. The fact that my father, who had always taken Amanda's side, was now advocating for me seemed to shake her more than anything else had. My mother spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. Sweetheart, actions have consequences. This agreement gives you a path to make amends without legal repercussions. Amanda's défiance crumbled. For the first time, I saw her as she truly was, not the confident, successful sister I'd envied, but a frightened young woman whose facade of perfection had been built on lies and manipulation. I can't afford $200 a month right now, she said in a small voice. The agreement includes a 3-month grace period, I explained. And the monthly amount can be adjusted based on documented financial hardship. I don't want to punish you, Amanda. I want restitution and acknowledgement. After a long moment, she nodded. Do you have a pen? I provided one, watching as she signed the document with shaking hands. My father signed as witness, then passed the pen to my mother, who did the same. And the second gift? My mother asked, eyeing the smaller box that had, oddly, shifted slightly on its own. I smiled for the first time that morning. The second gift represents my new beginning. I opened the box carefully to reveal Scout, the tiny gray kitten I'd rescued. He blinked in the sudden light, then stood and stretched in his box. 3 days ago, I found him abandoned in a dumpster, I explained, lifting him gently. He was thrown away, considered worthless by whoever had him before. but with proper care. He's already thriving. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. My mother's eyes filled with tears. He's my responsibility now, I continued. Just as my life is my responsibility. I'm keeping the apartment. I've taken over the lease legally, and starting today, I'm rebuilding my life on my own terms. You're really not coming home? My mother asked, a note of sadness in her voice. This is my home now, I replied. And as for our family home, I won't be where I'm not truly welcome. The text message yesterday made that pretty clear. My father had the grace to look ashamed. That was hasty. I should have gotten your side of the story. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But it revealed something important: how quickly you were willing to discard me based on hearsay. How little benefit of the doubt I receive compared to Amanda. We never meant to make you feel that way, my mother protested weakly. Intentions don't matter as much as patterns, I said. And our family pattern has always been that Amanda is believed, Amanda is favored, Amanda is supported, while I'm questioned, criticized, and held to a different standard. My father started to object, then stopped, seeming to really consider my words for the first time. Perhaps there's some truth to that, he admitted reluctantly. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. When I opened it, Mrs. Thompson stood there holding a casserole dish. Good morning, Peter, she said cheerfully. I thought you might like some breakfast. I made too much coffee cake, as usual. She noticed the family gathering and paused. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I can come back later. Not at all, I said, ushering her in. Mrs. Thompson, these are my parents, Frank and Diane Jackson, and my sister Amanda. Everyone. This is Eleanor Thompson, my upstairs neighbor, who saved my Christmas yesterday. Mrs. Thompson entered with the confidence of someone who had seen enough of life to be past caring about awkward situations. Pleasure to meet you all. Peter spoke very highly of you. The small lie was kind. I certainly hadn't spoken highly of them during our dinner, but it smoothed over the moment. My phone rang as Mrs. Thompson set down her dish in the kitchen. The caller ID showed Taylor and Powell, the company where I had the upcoming interview. Excuse me, I should take this, I said, stepping into the hallway. 5 minutes later, I returned to find my family and Mrs. Thompson engaged in strained small talk. They all looked up expectantly. That was Taylor and Powell, I explained. They want to meet with me tomorrow instead of waiting until after New Year's. Apparently, they have an urgent need for someone with my background. That's wonderful, my mother said, attempting enthusiasm, despite the tense atmosphere. Congratulations, my father added gruffly. Amanda said nothing, staring at her hands. Thank you, I replied. Now, I hate to be abrupt, but I need to prepare for that interview. And Amanda, you probably want to start packing your things. Packing? She repeated, looking up in alarm. Yes. Since I've taken over the lease, you'll need to find new accommodations. I've specified in our agreement that you have 2 weeks to move out. That should be sufficient time. Amanda looked to our parents, who both remained silent, offering no rescue this time. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. My father cleared his throat. You can stay in your old room until you find a place. But this agreement with your brother stands. And you'll need to figure out a budget that allows for the monthly payments. Amanda nodded mutely, the reality of consequences finally sinking in. As they prepared to leave, my mother hesitated at the door. Peter, about Christmas. I'm sorry. We should have listened to you. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But that's been true for most of my life. She flinched at the honest assessment, but didn't argue. Could we try again? Maybe dinner next week? I considered this. I'm not ready for that yet. I need time. And if we rebuild our relationship, it needs to be different, equal, based on respect, rather than conformity to expectations. My father, who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly extended his hand. That's fair. More than fair, given the circumstances. I shook his hand, the first gesture of adult equality he had ever offered me. After they left, Mrs. Thompson stayed to help me clean up the evidence folders and paperwork. You handled that remarkably well, she observed, pouring us each a cup of coffee to go with her coffee cake. I had a good advisor, I replied with a smile. Nonsense. You found your own strength. I just provided dinner and perspective. Scout had emerged from under the couch where he'd hidden during the confrontation, and now played with a crumpled piece of wrapping paper. What will you do now? Mrs. Thompson asked. Build a life that's authentically mine, I said. Starting with this interview tomorrow, this apartment, and this little guy. I gestured to Scout, who had abandoned the paper to attack my shoelace. And your family? I considered the question carefully. The door is open for them to be part of my life, but only if they can respect the boundaries I've established. I won't chase their approval anymore. Mrs. Thompson nodded approvingly. That's wisdom, not bitterness. There's a profound difference. That evening, after spending hours preparing for my interview, I received 3 separate text messages from my father. I reviewed our family dynamics after today. You were right about the double standard. I'm sorry. Would like to talk when you're ready. From my mother. Thinking about today. So much I should have done differently. Not just now, but through your childhood. I love you and want to do better. From Amanda. Simply, I'm sorry. I didn't respond immediately to any of them. Their words deserved consideration rather than reactive forgiveness. Real reconciliation, if it happened, would require time and consistent behavior change. Instead, I composed a single group message to all 3. Thanks for existing. The door is open when you're ready for something real. Then I settled on the couch, no longer a pull-out bed, but my actual couch in my actual apartment with Scout purring beside me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt at peace with myself and my decisions. The Christmas that had begun with rejection and betrayal had transformed into something unexpected. A clean slate, a clear path forward, and the profound realization that family isn't defined by obligation or blood, but by truth, respect, and authentic connection. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed clears the space for what you truly deserve. Sometimes the greatest gift is the freedom to create your own definition of home and family. And sometimes, the most powerful act of love is having the courage to draw boundaries that allow for genuine relationships rather than harmful patterns. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining a toxic relationship and standing up for your own well-being? What helped you find the strength to establish healthy boundaries? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own health and happiness. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the family we're born into.